The 11 members represented 54% of world production, 70% of known reserves, and 85% of exports. Despite its economic strength, OPEC was unable to overcome the majors' power in its first 10 years. Under the majors' continued domination, Perez Alfonso and Abdallah Tariki, the two founders of OPEC, were to pay for their independent spirit dearly. Tariki was to be the first in 1962.
Tariki, who had a reputation of being anti-American. And one of the reasons he had that reputation is that he wanted to get a higher proportion of the economic value of the oil for his own country. He was a radical, and I'm not sure what role we played in getting him fired, but he was ultimately removed from the position. And Zeki Yamani, who is at least as intelligent as his predecessor, and far, far, far smoother than Tariki, took over as oil minister.
Sheikh Yamani, the man with the everlasting smile, was a trained lawyer and a shrewd diplomat. For 20 years, he was a key figure within OPEC.
I always believe in evolution. I don't believe in revolution. And then you cannot nationalize the price of oil just like this unless you have the manpower and the expertise and the ability to do it. We did not have that. So I wanted to have a gradual ownership in our oil resources.
In 1963, having thought OPEC would be devoted to the emancipation of the Third World, Perez Alfonso was disappointed to see his efforts being wasted on petty dealings and palace plots. He resigned just 1 year after his friend Tariki was ejected. Alfonso decided to act without OPEC's backing and became its conscience as he fought on behalf of the environment. During the 1960s, the conflict worsened, and oil became both a political and economic weapon. 3 OPEC Arab countries, Algeria, Libya, and Iraq, spearhead the struggle to come. They had revolutionary ideals, and their leaders, Boumediene, Gaddafi, and Saddam Hussein, were fueled by a deep-seated anti-Western hatred. Conversely, Saudi Arabia and Iran were seen as puppets in the hands of the American imperialist enemy. Algeria, a newcomer who joined OPEC in 1969, took the lead in the oil crusade. Unlike other OPEC members, Algeria had gained independence in 1862 by force of arms after a 7-year war against France. For this freshly liberated country, revolutionary fervor was at a high, and so Algeria became devoted to the pursuit of Saharan oil, its greatest wealth opportunity. The Algerian oil adventure had started 10 years earlier in 1952, 2 years before the rebellion began, when the country was still a French colony. French determination to find oil in its colonies led a few non-conformist geologists to bet on Algerian Sahara oil, despite the skepticism of the majors' experts. The weather conditions were extreme, and the area, which is larger than France, was all but deserted, with no road infrastructure or housing facilities. After 4 years of failed drilling, oil was struck at last on June the 16th, 1956. Oil gushed from a 3,000-meter oil field in Hassi Massaoud, and the gas deposit of Hassi Armel was discovered a short time after. With these giant deposits, France joined the leaders in oil. The French press applauded the discovery, and black gold fever took hold of the French people. General de Gaulle himself joined the celebration with a visit to the Hassi Massaoud oil field. In 1960, with the Algerian conflict underway, the Sahara was to supply not just France, but Europe, in both oil and gas. It was at that time that secret negotiations between the French government and the Algerian revolutionary government began. From the very beginning, the Saharan oil situation always caused bitter arguments. They were to delay the end of the war by a year until it was concluded under the Evian Agreement in 1962.
Les accords d'Évian étaient un compromis entre les deux positions. D'un côté, la partie algérienne qui revendiquait la souveraineté sur ses richesses naturelles qui étaient dans le sous-sol algérien, dans le Sahara algérien, et d'un autre côté, je le disais tout à l'heure, la partie française qui voyait bien l'importance de ces ressources pétrolières et qui souhaitait en avoir du moins un usage direct, si c'est un usage relativement exclusif, compte tenu de la compétition qui se déroulait à ce moment-là. Nous sommes, mais il ne faut pas l'oublier, au début des années 60, la consommation pétrolière mondiale est en train d'exploser. La production de pétrole suit. C'est une période où il n'y a pas de difficulté. On trouve les grands bassins à travers le monde. Le Moyen-Orient se développe aussi. La Libye se développe et d'autres pays encore. Et donc, le pétrole était devenu les taux de croissance de la consommation pétrolière dans le monde à cause du succès de l'industrie automobile, entre autres, mais pas uniquement. On faisait à l'époque de l'électricité avec le pétrole, avec les produits pétroliers. Et donc, tout cela fait que la partie française insistait pour avoir du moins une position, si ce n'est exclusive, très privilégiée. Voilà, les accords d'Évian ont été l'aboutissement de cela, notamment avec la création la mise en place d'un système spécifique pour les hydrocarbures, pour le pétrole algérien. On a mis en place ce qu'on appelait un organisme spécifique saharien pour développer et exploiter en commun avec la partie algérienne le pétrole du sud de l'Algérie.
Despite such agreements, Franco-Algerian relations worsened in the years following independence. But in a sense, the Saharan oil fields remained French enclaves, exploited by two companies, Total and Elf Aquitaine, who owned 90% of shares. Although Algeria had created a nationalized company, Sonatrach, they were unable to take control of the situation in the early years and accused the French of leaving them with very little oil wealth. Tension moved up a notch when Colonel Boumedienne, a diehard of the Liberation War with strong anti-French feelings, led a coup in 1965. The threat to nationalized French companies was becoming increasingly serious.
Le problème de la nationalisation, il faut le replacer dans son contexte. Nous sommes tout à fait au début des années 70. Dans une phase où, au niveau mondial, les problèmes dits de libération nationale se posent encore et se posent même au niveau du droit au développement économique. C'est le début du questionnement des relations internationales sur le plan économique, c'est-à-dire le droit de ces pays dits du tiers-monde ou en voie de développement, par ailleurs regroupés dans d'autres associations comme le groupe des 77, etc., et qui portait un projet du droit au développement. Et le droit au développement impliquait, à un moment donné, d'entrer en contradiction avec ceux qui sont déjà en place, avec les plus forts. Ça n'a pas plu aux compagnies étrangères, notamment les compagnies françaises, qui étaient à 90% intéressées par la production.
The situation came to a head on February the 24th, 1971. Following the advice of the future Algerian president, Bouteflika, Colonel Boumedienne broke off talks with the French. For the first time in OPEC's history, he dared impose a unilateral decision regarding oil.